Welcome back to the Tech Whispers podcast. Do you get inspired by industry disruptors? I know I certainly do, and especially those companies who are disrupting industries that have been around for a long time. We often call those incumbent companies. SelectQuote is one of those companies we should all be studying and learning from. They have leveraged technology to streamline the insurance buying process, and in fact, were one of the first companies to introduce a direct-to-consumer marketplace that allows their customers to compare quotes from multiple insurance carriers. We take that for granted today. That's kind of how business should be done. But when they did this, it was brand new. Using advanced analytics and proprietary algorithms, they are able to provide personalized recommendations that simplify the insurance purchasing experience. Today, we are featuring Floyd May III, who is the CIO of this technology innovator. As a humble leader, Floyd is quick to give credit to his peers and his team. As a soft-spoken leader, Floyd lets his results and business outcomes tell the story. As a leader with intellectual curiosity, Floyd is always learning and helping others to learn. This is why I invited Floyd to be our keynote speaker for our latest TechLX graduation ceremonies. If you follow my podcast, you're familiar with this 9-month cohort-based IT leadership development program because we gift scholarships to STEM-based nonprofits. Floyd will be gifting a seat to the program here shortly. As Floyd and I were preparing for this TechLX graduation fireside chat, I asked if we could also feature him on my Tech Whispers podcast, which he graciously said yes. So Floyd, welcome and thank you for being our first ever guest to be featured during a TechLX graduation and concurrently a Tech Whispers podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the invitation. I'm glad to be a part of this monumental occasion. We'll see if you'll be using words gracious and humble after I say this. Have to admit, when I first accepted your invitation to participate, I thought it was going to be a destination graduation and we were going to be at HMSA in Hawaii. That being said, Dan, to keep with the theme of this being a fireside chat, I'll go ahead and change my background here. So give me a second.
Yeah, sounds good. I think Hawaii is a brilliant idea. So welcome to all of our HMSA folks. And I know it's early your time there. But Floyd, the SelectQuote story is one that is really special. It's a story of innovation. It's a story of disruption, bringing new value to your customers out there. So maybe we just kind of start there.
So I'll tell you, give me a moment again to brag on the organization. I promise this will be the last time you'll hear me boast, but a little bit about SelectQuote. We are the #1 direct-to-consumer term life insurance broker in America. And since our founding in 1985, we've sold over 1 million term life insurance policies. And today, we can boast that we have over 2 million policyholders when you look collectively across all of our lines of business. That's term life insurance, final expense, auto and home, and then Medicare Advantage. It's kind of hard to believe that this started with a husband and wife taking out a small ad in the Wall Street Journal telling people, if you want someone to shop for the best insurance policy, give us a call. Then the two of them sitting in front of a phone and just waiting for it to ring.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's really amazing. And what you've gone on to do to, as I say, to create something that didn't exist before. It's pretty magical what you've done. What attracted you? 2019, you've got this great career going on. You joined SelectQuote. So what was the ask from the board chair, the CEO? What did they challenge you to come do?
Yeah, that's a good question, Dan. I would tell you what attracted me to SelectQuote is their leadership team. I was familiar with some of their executives, having worked with them years ago when I first started my career. So I kind of watched them from afar, and I knew that they had a track record of success. So when I learned that SelectQuote was their latest endeavor, I started doing a little research on them. And just to give you an idea of how successful they were at that time, and fast forward a little bit, the company's revenue in 2018 was around $230 million. In 4 years, they grew that to just shy of $1 billion at $930 million. So, when I had the opportunity and engaged them, and when they talked about taking the company public, it was my responsibility based on the charge of the conversations I had with the chair of the board, the CEO, and the chief operating officer was how can we continue to grow the organization, specifically IT, and grow it responsibly, right? So kind of what that meant for me was I was inheriting an IT organization that was still operating like a startup. And so I needed to operationalize that charge by making sure what we did in IT was documented, repeatable, and auditable, understanding that a publicly traded company's got to go through SOX audits.
You're one of your trademarks, and I think for all of our folks in the graduation and for listening to the podcast, pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone today is so paramount, right? So, kind of take us back. It's what are the things you did to push yourself out of the comfort zone, Floyd? What did you do to set yourself up to get the CIO call, even back then in 2019?
Yeah, believe it or not, it had nothing to do with IT. At the time, I was actually working in the federal government and was participating in a leadership development program, just like the TechLX grads. It was a senior executive service candidate development program. And the program is a 12-month cohort-based program, and it requires you to participate in a 120-day detail in an organization or with a job that's outside of your comfort zone, right? The thought is for you to have a leadership experience to push yourself and learn about what you're good at in those areas that you're not good at. So for me, working in the federal government, and from before that, I was working in the local government, I looked at the private sector working for a for-profit organization. To me, that was going to be a big change, and that was going to push me a little bit, because now it went from providing services to those in need to actually providing equity for the shareholders of the organization. So at that time, most of my cohort, they were DC based. And so a lot of them just went and worked in other federal agencies. For example, a lot of the people in my cohort worked for the Department of Interior. So we were talking about park rangers, even had one of my classmates who was responsible for the Hoover Dam. So they would do things like, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go work for HUD. I'll work in housing. That's different. Well, I was in Kansas City at the time, and I really didn't want to do the same thing and travel to DC and be away from my family for 120 days. So I actually tapped into my network and reached out to the SelectQuote folks and said, hey, how'd you like to have some free executive labor?
That's an offer you can't resist, right? I mean, and just again, you went way out of your comfort zone and took on this new opportunity. I love it. Another way I'd love to have you talk about SelectQuote, and I think it's just a great couple lenses to think about our companies and our organizations that we work for, is through the lens of two books. So one of the books was written by Andy Grove, Intel, years ago, and the book is called "Only the Paranoid Survive." And the other book is Good to Great by Jim Collins. These are books that everyone should have read if you haven't before, but I think the first line of that book is amazing. Good is the enemy of great. So with those two books in mind, Floyd, given all the success your company's enjoyed, how does SelectQuote fight complacency? Because your competitors would love to come and knock you off, right? They would love to come replicate and leapfrog you. So how do you fight that as a company and you in IT?
Yeah, that's the $1,000 stock price question, right?
Yeah.
In addition to the line you quoted, which is a good one, I'm also reminded by what the book talks about in terms of the Hedgehog Concept, which is, for those of you who haven't read the book and don't want to spoil it for you, but the Hedgehog Concept is something the author talks about, which is the intersection of three things. One, what you're deeply passionate about. Two, what you can be best in the world at. And three, what best drives your economic engine. For SelectQuote, our Hedgehog Concept is two things. One, we are a customer acquisition company. And two, a customer engagement company, right? So when we were getting ready to go public and we met with the analysts from the street, we talked about SelectQuote being technology enabled. And we're a company with purpose-built technology, proprietary built, right? What was true then is still true now. But I will add that our use of technology is our competitive advantage. The way that we stay ahead of our competitors is to continue to focus on our Hedgehog concept and find ways to maximize the use of technology to do so.
Yeah, Hedgehog, everyone read that. And when you see the intersection of those three things, pretty special, right, Floyd? I mean, it really gives you that competitive advantage, whether it's your company or you individually. It applies to you individually as well. So that's awesome. Floyd, I mentioned earlier that we're here today also celebrating our TechLX graduates who have just completed this 9-month cohort-based leadership program. And we're recording with a live audience, so it's great to see everyone here. This is the industry's best and brightest, and I got to tell you what, it gives me great confidence in the future of our profession. One of our standouts in the program has been Brian Posada, and I've asked Brian if he'd step up and step in and ask a couple of questions as a guest host of today's ceremony. So, Brian, welcome to you. Maybe you can just kind of give a quick hello. Tell us who PN&L is, and jump in and have some fun with Floyd.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dan, and hi, Floyd. It's really a pleasure to meet you and learn about your incredible journey. By the way, I really enjoyed your comment around growing IT responsibly. That documented, repeatable, and auditable kind of approach, right? Very relatable, I think, to me and my team, right? So great insight. So as Dan mentioned, as you can see, I'm Brian Posada, right? I'm the digital platform manager at PN&L, Pacific Northwest National Lab. It's a DOE national lab. My role involves really partnering with our business leads to define and drive our strategies and manage a portfolio of risk and value-driven and user-centric technical solutions. So, Floyd, I think for my first question, actually, and kind of related to your comment around growing IT responsibly, as a CIO, how do you balance the need for innovation and experimentation with the constant demands for stability, reliability, and security, right? In an organization's kind of technology infrastructure.
Dan's been throwing me some off-speed pitches. You came right out with the fastball. So I would tell you the short answer, Brian, is very delicately, right? And I know you laugh, I laugh at that, but there's truth in jokes. I would tell you this question is very timely because it ties right into what's going on now with generative AI, right? So my peers and I are asking ourselves and each other, how do we proceed with caution without getting left behind, right? What I would tell you is the key is to be disciplined and structured while at the same time being unstructured. And I'm sure you're asking yourself, what the heck does that mean, right? You tell me to be structured in an unstructured way. Instead of me trying to explain it and probably confusing you more, I'll tell you high level how we're handling generative AI, right? So first thing we did is we put out an interim policy to the company, letting them know, hey, you can't use these products on your own. If you found some good ones out there that you'd like to use or try out, just come to us, submit a request. We put together a review board that includes our senior vice president of compliance, our general counsel, our senior vice president over technology development, and then the director of IT security. And what we do is we review those from all of our respective lenses to make sure that it's something that we're comfortable with, right? Inside of IT, our senior vice president of technology development also heads up our R&D group. And so we've given him a sandbox environment that was blessed by our director of IT security, where he can play around with a number of tools. And then once he feels like they're ready for prime time or ready for production, to put those in our environments, then we go through a formal, more intense review and approval process.
Thank you. I see what you mean by, delicately, right? It's definitely a delicate balance between, the flexibility as well as, managing those measures, right, that we need to have in place. Thank you. For my second question, I would say, what advice do you have for aspiring technology leaders who are looking to advance their careers and make an impact in their organizations, right? Are there any specific skills or experiences they should focus on developing?
I would say continue to do what you've done with this program, right? Look for opportunities to grow by pushing yourself and adding to your network. And I mean your neural and your people network, right? You want to have your own personal database that you can call on as the situation necessitates, because the situations are going to be different, right? In all the positions that I've had throughout my career that have been game changers for me professionally, a lot of those jobs have been unadvertised jobs. And the only way that happened was through experience and exposure that programs like TechLX and the network that I created as a result of it cultivated.
You know, Brian, we run this program, 25 cohorts around the globe a year. Can you just give a couple nuggets of maybe some takeaways that you, as a senior leader now, what you took away from the program?
Yeah, definitely. I can actually think of three off the top of my head. But one of the main takeaways for me was the development of that IT marketing plan, right? And how throughout the workshops and the sessions, we're gradually building up to that, right? Putting all the pieces together for that plan, and really shifting our mentality, or rather supplementing it, right, with marketing perspectives that create value-driven conversations around the role of IT, better enabling us to communicate and socialize the value of a partnership with IT, really, right? So another key aspect, I think, is our instructors and mentors throughout the program just did a fantastic job just bringing real world, very applicable and relevant information into those sessions. And last but not least, really the collaboration with others from other companies and industries, that diversity of experiences, ideas, and knowledge really open up your world, right, and broaden your perspectives in terms of giving you more ways to really approach challenges and innovation, right? So
Thanks so much for jumping in and representing your cohort, representing PNNL and yourself. And Floyd, I want to build on one of Brian's questions, and it's another book. The book "What Got Me Here Won't Get Me There," another must-read book. So as you think about your career, you think about going from individual contributor, where we all start, to where you are today as a senior executive. What changes as you climb the ladder, as you take on higher level roles?
So that's a great one. And certainly you're going to hear kind of a recurring theme with me today, but I reference back to a cohort-based leadership class, much like the TechLX graduates went through. And my program was a little bit longer, it was a 12-month program. But when the light bulb really turned on for me to answer this question, Dan, was one of those sessions and something that one of the program facilitators had us do and talk to us about. I'm gonna have you guys do it right now. I want everybody to take out a piece of paper and a pen, and I'll make this quick, but I'll give you a second to take that out.
Now, you all know what paper and pen are, right? Just want to make sure.
All right. So what I want you to do is, at the top of the paper, I want you to take and draw a circle the size of a dime. And I want you to put the letter T inside of the circle. Next to that, I want you to draw a circle about 2 inches apart, the size of a $50. Inside of that circle, I want you to put an R. All right, now draw a line underneath both circles. Underneath the dime size circle, they have the T in it. And underneath the line, I want you to draw a $50 size circle and put a T in it. About 2 inches of space underneath the circle and the line where you had the $50 size circle with the R in it. I want you to put a dime size circle and put an R in it.
Got it. Okay.
So when you're finished, your picture should look something like this, right? So what the facilitator told us is, below the line where you have the $50 size circle with the T in it, and the dime size circle that has the R in it, T stands for tasks, R stands for relationships. That is where you are today. And that is what has gotten you to the point of being selected to participate in this leadership class. You have done a lot in your career, and you've been heavy when it comes to accomplishing tasks. The R stands for relationships. And while you've had relationships that you've developed and cultivated and used throughout your career, there has not been a heavy emphasis on it. Above the line is where you will go as you progress in your leadership career and as you get into more senior level and executive positions. And so it's going to be less about the tasks that you do, and it's going to be more about relationships. When I look back on my career, that is what has helped me climb the ladder, which was to develop and to cultivate those relationships.
I love that visual, that mindset shift, and fits so well with the TechLX program, right? It's all about building relationships, that leadership EQ, having those consultative, strategic partnering and conversations. As Brian said, be able to market, be able to tell a story, communicate our values. So that's really helpful, Floyd. And everyone here does a phenomenal job of showing up different than their peers. They really show up different. And I think that our profession, Floyd, we don't have a good enough appreciation for our brand, the fact that our brand walks in the room before we do, the fact that there's a room somewhere where talent, people are being discussed about succession, new opportunities, stretch assignments. So maybe kind of speak to that in that context about, how do we help people build their brand?
This is one of the few areas where you'll hear me say the younger generation has this one figured out a lot better than us, because those TikTokers, YouTubers, whatever, they know how to build a brand, right? So, but in all seriousness, what I will tell you is, and this may sound counterintuitive, take on those projects that no one else wants, especially if it's a failed project, right? 5 things are going to come out of that. Number 1, the bar is low. You don't have to do much to show progress. Number 2, just like with this leadership class, it allows you to learn and to grow. 3, you'll add to your network. 4, you'll be exposed to leaders in the organization, throughout the organization, at all levels of the organization. And 5, and this is where it gets really into the brand building, you will develop a reputation as someone who is able to take on challenging projects. Ultimately, that's going to give you experience and exposure, both of which add to your brand and position you for the next promotion.
That's so good. That's so good. I love those 5 points, and it's pushing ourselves out of the comfort zone. And as you're answering these questions, Floyd, I'm thinking about one of my favorite Floydisms. As you think about your role today, how you lead, and it's around my role is to enable and to facilitate. Can you speak to those points?
It's really a lot of what we've been talking about so far, Dan. Even the words of Brian, but when you seek out leadership development and professional development opportunities, my advice to you is don't go in thinking that the greatness of the program, no offense, Dan, or the professors or the facilitators are going to auto-magically make you better. That's not going to happen. If that's what you're thinking, stop, close your books up, ask for a refund, and get out, right? The strength of these programs for you is if you take the understanding and you apply the mantra, you will only get out of it what you put into it. If you embrace that notion, I guarantee you the rest will organically materialize.
Point well taken. Floyd, I've been in this business a long time, 38 years, best profession ever. I find there's certain attributes that are very consistent in the top leaders. And it has nothing to do with a bright, shiny object. So let's just put that on the table. But what I do find is the best leaders like yourself are very, very intentional, very laser focused on what I call the 7 C's of great leaders. You're focused on the customer. So outside in, inside out. So you all think about that in your worlds, right? Outside in, inside out, customer, big C, little c. Focus on culture, building culture that people want to be part of, high performing culture, innovative culture, learning culture, very much focused on cultivate. You're big on knowing and growing, engaging, retaining, developing your people, attracting the best people. That's cultivate. Courage. It's a big one right today, right? The fourth one is courage, leadership courage. Fifth one is change. You all are really good at not just change, but taking people on that change journey. And the last two are you're great collaborators and great communicators. So I just threw a lot at you there, Floyd, but I kind of unpack a couple of these. So I think SelectQuote, I think customer. Just think of how you're a customer acquisition company, how you think about take the friction out for your customer. How do you tie your people, your staff, IT, to the customer, to that end customer?
Honestly speaking, Dan, that's a difficult one. Getting technical folks who have spent their entire career, for the most part, doing technical things to view their technical work from the customer's lens. So the way that we try to do that is by listening to our internal customers, right? Even though we are a direct to consumer company, the feedback that we get from those consumers comes to us by our internal customers, our internal business partners, right? So you heard me talk about, and you mentioned it, SelectQuote's Hedgehog Concept around customer engagement. So we have a lot of tools and techniques on the business side to solicit the voice of the customer. We get that information from the business. Sometimes it's good information, good feedback, sometimes it's bad, sometimes in between. But the point is, we create those opportunities to hear from them and get that information. And I'll give you one example, and this is a recent one. I was working with the team on redundancy. And what is our plan, our cyclical maintenance redundancy testing plan? And the way they presented the information to me, it was all from a technical lens. It was all IT speak. Good information, accurate information, important information. But when it comes to our customers, it meant nothing. So I challenged them to go back and I said, now I want you to take the same information and I want you to put this into the business view, right? So if our business starts with the customer, well, how do we acquire our customers? How do we get our leads? So if in our term life insurance business, we acquire 90% of our customers through our internet page, then well, it starts with the internet. It starts with our web page. So that web page now takes on a different level of importance. So we absolutely need to make sure that we have monitoring on the web page. We absolutely need to make sure that we've got canaries on the web page. We absolutely need to make sure we've got redundancy around the web page. Because if that web page goes down, then our sales reps can't sell. So looking at it from a customer lens, understanding and hearing the voice from the customer is important to us.
A lot of CIOs I talked to today are really concerned about their people not having the leadership courage needed to lead us into the future, right? There's a lot of unknowns. We're in a VUCA world where there's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. These are interesting times, right? So anything that you do intentionally to encourage leadership courage?
First, I try to lead by example. Not only for my direct reports, not only for the IT leadership team, which is all the directors and above, not only for the managers in the organization, but also for those non-management associates. I don't try to hide my imperfections. I let them see my human side. If I make a mistake, I try to own up to it and I let them see that, right? Because I'm not perfect. And I will tell you, just here recently for me, we had some shifts in our organization. So instead of reporting directly to the CEO, I'm now reporting directly to the chief operating officer. In one of my first discussions, and we were just talking, and he was giving me his view on how he sees the world, how he sees the organization. He talked about this, and he talked about, I will respect you more if you tell me about the bad things. I will not have a lot of respect if I find out you're trying to hide them from me. That takes courage. Imagine me now with a new person that I'm directly reporting to, and he's telling me, I want to know all your flaws, right? So if I'm sharing that information, I'm relaying that information to my organization about the change, they're looking to me to model the behavior of what they should be doing. And so that's where it kind of starts. I've said, try to lead by example. That's the way that I can convey that information. Because it's one thing to say it, but it's another thing to actually do it and apply it. Because they are watching, whether you know it or not.
Takes a big load off the shoulders too, if you're just kind of who you are, trying to be somebody else, right? And yeah, it's a good transition, Floyd, into communication. And you got an interesting way to think about what I'll call truth telling. There's a great Floydism around truth telling. You know what I'm talking about?
So what you may be talking about is the truth only hurts for the time you tell it. Is that the one?
That's the one. I think that's powerful. Can you unpack that for us?
Actually ties into what I was just talking about. Like, don't let somebody else control your narrative. Don't let somebody assume that you're not being timely with giving them the bad news because you're trying to hide something, right? They may not like what you have to tell them, but they will respect the fact that you own up to it and communicated that information to them directly. I've experienced that throughout my career. I've had the benefit of working for some great leaders who have modeled that behavior and who have done that for me. I also had the opportunity to work for some terrible leaders who haven't done it. And I've seen what it's done to me. I've seen what it's done to the team. I've seen what it's done to their career. So, don't hide from that truth. Obviously, make sure that you are, have your facts in order, but don't try to get all the answers before you're just honest. Even if they're saying, hey, I don't have all the facts on it yet. Here's what I know so far.
It's kind of bastardizing a Ben Franklin quote, but bad news and fish, right? They don't smell better with time, right? So better to address all that up front. Well, Floyd, we're kind of winding down here. This has been an amazing chat, but on the podcast, we have been donating scholarships to the TechLX program, $150,000 a year in scholarships. And in fact, my team had a presentation this morning from one of our scholarship recipients from a nonprofit organization. So I want to give you the ability as our CIO guest to gift a seat in this program to one of the nonprofits that you are engaged in, that you support.
That's great, Dan. And I will tell you, I was honored and excited to be able to do this fireside chat. And, I would have done it for free, but this particular opportunity is something that is just amazing. And I'm happy I'm getting this chance. So the group that I'd like to gift the seat to is called the W.E.B. Du Bois Learning Center. And it's here in Kansas City. It's a grassroots organization that seeks to improve academic performance in underserved communities through educational services, technology, since its inception, which has been around now, gosh, Dan, probably I would say 35 plus years. It offers free tutorial services for local residents in STEM subjects, as well as other educational and vocational counseling services. I personally have ties to the center, including being one of the youth that benefited from the programs. But even now, I continue to tap into the resources. In fact, two of my IT leaders were participants in the program and have turned around, and now they dedicate and devote their time on a free basis to the program. And I'm not just talking about, some line staff employees, although there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm talking about the director of my infrastructure operations team that's over network operations and systems operations, as well as the director of my IT security. So I would love to gift that Du Bois Center and their technology team a seat in your program.
We will look forward to working with you to get them plugged into the program, our upcoming cohort. And I don't think we've ever had a guest on the show gift it to a program they've actually been the beneficiary of. So that's even more special for you, I know. So that's outstanding. Last question for you, Floyd, probably the hardest question of all, of the entire chat so far. So you're a Kansas City native, you're You're there with our fireside chat today. Are the Chiefs going to be repeat champions this year in the Super Bowl?
Whew. That is a tough one, Dan. Let me see how I'm going to answer that. Here's what I'll say. I don't want to be the one, right? And I don't want to be the one to jinx the Chiefs. So I'm not going to make any predictions. And the reason why I'm telling you I don't want to be the one, there was a guy back in 2020 when Mahomes won the first Super Bowl, our first round playoff game against Houston. Some of you may remember this. The Chiefs were down 21-0 in the first quarter. This guy went live and he was walking out of the stadium and his name was Chuck. And he said, listen, it's my fault. As a matter of fact, my buddies call me Bad Luck Chuck. I'm going to sacrifice myself and I'm going to leave the stadium so the Chiefs can win. The Chiefs go on to win 51-31, right? So I want to be known as Bad Luck Chuck. I'm not going to make any prediction. All I'll say is I'm looking forward to the ride and I like our chances.
You and Patrick Mahomes are two people I have great respect for in your humble leadership, how much you do for your community and your craft. So really appreciate you, Floyd, and coming here, opening up your playbook and sharing your leadership philosophies that really set you apart as truly a customer first, a business first CIO. And I know our graduates, I know our Tech Whisperers audience came away with a lot of nuggets to beef up their toolkit. So thank you for that inspiration. And on behalf of all of us, we wish SelectQuote just continued amazing success. So thanks so much, Floyd.
Thanks, Dan. Appreciate the opportunity and congratulations to the graduates.
You've been listening to Tech Whisperers, inside the playbook of the best digital leaders, a Woolette and Associates podcast. Keep connected with us by subscribing to the show in your favorite podcast player. If you like what you've heard, please rate the show, as this helps us connect the world's best digital leaders with those who aspire to learn, grow, and thrive in this amazing profession. Thanks for listening. Until next time.